The K-drama that Korea wanted canceled just became the #1 global sensation Netflix didn't see coming. Do you know which real-life tragedy sparked nationwide boycott calls before this show even aired? Have you seen the shocking 100% Rotten Tomatoes score that left critics stunned? And do you know how a series banned from having fan events in its home country ended up dominating charts in over 20 nations? Keep watching, because this underdog story will blow your mind. This is the incredible journey of Trigger, a Netflix K-drama that went from being South Korea's most controversial series to becoming the world's most talked-about thriller. And trust me, this roller coaster ride is wilder than any plot twist you'll see on screen. Let's start with why Trigger was controversial from day one. This isn't your typical K-drama about office romance or high school friendships. Trigger is a dystopian action thriller that imagines something almost unthinkable. South Korea flooded with guns and violent crime. To understand why this premise hit like a bomb, you need to know that South Korea has some of the strictest gun laws in the world. Private gun ownership is virtually non-existent. The idea of ordinary Korean citizens carrying firearms and chaos erupting in the streets? It's not just fiction, it's borderline science fiction for Korean audiences. The show follows a police officer's desperate struggle to contain absolute mayhem after a terminally ill man, driven by revenge, floods the streets with illegal firearms. Picture your everyday Seoul neighborhood transformed into something that looks more like a war zone. For Korean viewers, this wasn't just entertainment, it was a nightmare scenario brought to life. But here's where things get really complicated. The timing of this show's announcement couldn't have been worse, and what happened next turned Trigger from a bold creative choice into a cultural lightning rod. In July 2025, just as Trigger was preparing for its Netflix debut, South Korea was rocked by a tragic real-life shooting incident in Songdo, Incheon. A 62-year-old man shot his own son with a homemade shotgun, the kind of violent crime that almost never happens in Korea. The incident sent shockwaves through the nation, not just because of its tragic nature, but because gun violence simply doesn't exist in Korean society. And then people started connecting the dots to Trigger's storyline about sudden, explosive gun violence. Social media erupted. Korean netizens began calling for boycotts of the show, accusing Netflix of being insensitive and capitalizing on real tragedy. The timing felt too convenient, too calculated, too exploitative. Critics claimed Trigger was loosely inspired by the Incheon shooting, suggesting Netflix had somehow rushed the show to capitalize on the headlines. Director Kwon Oh-sung was heartbroken by the accusations. He strongly denied any connection between his show and the real incident, calling it a devastating coincidence. He expressed genuine grief over the tragedy and insisted that Trigger had been conceived and produced completely independently. But the damage was already done. The controversy became a burning topic across Korean forums and news outlets. The situation got so heated that a planned promotional fan event was abruptly canceled with no explanation. Something almost unheard of in the K-drama world, where fan engagement is everything. Korean society was wrestling with a fundamental question. Was it too much? Too soon? Many felt that a gritty gun crime drama was simply inappropriate for a nation still processing such an unusual and traumatic event. Trigger hadn't even aired yet, but it was already being labeled as tone-deaf and exploitative. Then, July 25th, 2025 happened, and everything changed. When Netflix released Trigger globally, something remarkable occurred. The domestic outrage didn't stop international audiences from tuning in. If anything, the controversy made people more curious. Within days, Trigger shot straight to number 2 on Netflix's global non-English TV charts. Let me put this in perspective. In its premiere week, Trigger was the second most watched non-English series worldwide on Netflix, only behind the absolute juggernaut that is Squid Game 3, which held the number 1 spot with 28.5 million hours viewed. That's not just success, that's a cultural phenomenon. But it didn't stop there. By its second week, Trigger was still dominating, ranking number 4 globally with over 2.9 million views. The series charted in the top 10 across 20 different countries, from Asia to Europe to the Middle East. We're talking Romania, Indonesia, Thailand, Kuwait, and dozens of others. Here's the most shocking part. Even South Korea itself eventually tuned in. Despite all the boycott calls, Korean viewers couldn't resist the curiosity. Maybe it was the controversy, maybe it was word of mouth. But the numbers don't lie. Koreans were watching Trigger in massive numbers, even while publicly condemning it. The boycott at home had completely failed to stop Trigger from becoming a streaming phenomenon abroad. In fact, it might have helped. But Trigger didn't just win over audiences, it conquered the critics too. And that's where things get really impressive. The series currently boasts a perfect 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Let me repeat that, 100%. Every single published review aggregated on the site has been positive. This is incredibly rare for any show, but especially for K-dramas, which often don't even get enough Western critical reviews to generate a score. Critics praised Trigger for its bold, unflinching storytelling and high-tension action that they'd rarely seen in Korean series. Reviewers were gripped by what they called its raw portrayal of chaos and its powerful commentary on social fears and gun violence. What started as a local controversy had evolved into Trigger being recognized as a standout thriller in the K-drama landscape. The show that Korea wanted to cancel was being hailed internationally as a masterpiece of tension and social commentary. The performances by lead actors Kim Nam-gil, Kim Young-kwang, and Park Hoon were universally acclaimed for grounding the high-concept premise in emotional reality. Their portrayals kept viewers binge-watching and turned Trigger into social media gold, with fans recommending it alongside Squid Game for anyone seeking an adrenaline rush. The success of Trigger sparked a fascinating cultural debate that goes far beyond one TV show. In South Korea, the initial hostility has softened somewhat, but the country remains divided. Some domestic viewers have come around to appreciate Trigger's unflinching take on a normally taboo subject. They see it as bold storytelling that pushes Korean media into new territory. Others still feel it sensationalizes violence beyond what Korean society is comfortable with. This split reaction highlights a bigger question. How far can Korean media push boundaries, especially when reality starts to mirror fiction? Trigger didn't just cross a line, it obliterated it, intentionally or not. Meanwhile, Netflix has been watching this entire saga with great interest. The success of Trigger proves their strategy of diversifying Korean content beyond typical romantic comedies is paying off big time. They've been deliberately broadening their K-content slate to include more psychological thrillers and action dramas, and Trigger's global domination validates that approach completely. One industry analyst put it perfectly. Trigger's success proves how strong K-dramas still are for the platform, especially when they dare to be different. The director's response throughout the controversy remained gracious, expressing regret over the real-life tragedy while standing by his creative vision. The cancelled fan event showed that the studio took local concerns seriously, but Trigger's international triumph ultimately overshadowed its domestic troubles. By August 2025, it was clear that Trigger had become one of Netflix's top non-English shows of the entire year. The series that was supposed to be boycotted had instead taken over the world. Trigger proves that in our global streaming era, content can find massive success internationally even when it faces resistance at home. Sometimes controversy isn't just publicity, it's rocket fuel for worldwide domination. Netflix hasn't announced a second season yet, and Trigger was reportedly conceived as a limited series. But given that cliffhanger ending and the massive global response, fans are hoping this underdog hit might return for another explosive chapter. What do you think? Should Trigger get a second season? Or was this controversy to success story perfect as a one-time phenomenon? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories from the world of K-drama. Thanks for watching.